Ryan here with Dark Rangers Inc. and today we're finally going to do the first review of the Sharpstar SCA 260. Now I know a lot of you guys have been waiting for this for a while since I announced receiving the scope from Sharpstar, and the bad news is I've had the same horrible El Nino winter that all of you guys have had, but the good news is I've had my hands on the scope for a while. In general, I don't like to do those glorified unboxing videos where I basically cover the stats that you can get online. I really want to use the scope so I can help you guys understand what it's going to be like to own an image with something like this, because on paper it is a very promising optic. You've got 1300 millimeters, which for galaxy season coming up is a really great focal length, at a native f5, which is very fast for any scope over 1000 millimeters. It also has a massive 80 millimeter imaging circle, so you can get sensor sizes even above medium format, and it actually has a focuser that can handle a decent amount of weight without getting some tilt. All my reflector guys will know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go over what it's like to own not only the SCA, but some things to consider on big reflectors in general. And so my goal is by the end of the video that you have all of the information you need to know to make the decision on whether or not to add the scope to your arsenal. And the first thing that I want to go over is actually the size itself. And for that, we're going to go ahead and jump outside. So now that we're outside, you can really see this is a big scope. I'm a little over 6 feet tall, and this thing is about my height when you put it on the mount with the pier. And if you're wanting to mount this thing with just yourself, you basically have to be able to kind of tuck it under one arm, lift it onto here, and then screw it in place. It does weigh 39.8 pounds with the color setup and just a hair over 40 pounds with the monochrome and the electronic filter wheel, and that's just with the lightweight ASI Air. It is a 10-inch mirror, but it's actually 13 inches in diameter, so it kind of identifies more as like an 11 or 12-inch scope, especially when you consider the weight. Now, I know you're going to want me to answer the question, will it work long-term with the AM5? And I will go over that when we go back inside. But speaking of that, you are going to want to consider a budget for an off-axis guider. If that is something that you don't already own, you will likely need one to get the guiding accuracy that you're going to need. And then you're also going to have to get this thing collimated. Now, there aren't that many people out there that own this thing, so trying to find information on collimation was a bit of a nightmare. If you ask 6 different owners, which I did, you get 4 different answers. The only one that I saw a couple times was the Ocal version 3 collimation tool, which has been out of stock, but Agena Astro does carry it, so just keep checking for that. I ended up using the Cheshire eyepiece that comes with it, which is basically just a 1 1/4 inch eyepiece with a little hole in it. And you do that to try to get the primary mirror in line with the secondary mirror. And I was able to get it pretty close with that. And then I got my hands on a Howie Glatter laser system, which is an additional $450 to use on the camera side to get it perfectly lined up so that these two mirrors are talking to each other in a way that gives you the smallest, roundest stars as humanly possible. So I think you can get it pretty close with the eyepiece, and some people do try to do the out of focus star method. This one does act different than a Newtonian or an SCT, and so you just have to be aware that collimating this thing is going to be a bit of a challenge, even if you've already done it with previous scopes in the past. Some additional purchases that I did as well were a big dew strap. This thing is a dust, dew, and frost magnet. If you have OCD, never look down this side because the mirror gets filthy. And every night that I've used this thing, there has been dew just sitting on the primary mirror. Luckily, it does have a fan system, which is actually pretty powerful. So I found best results by turning that on about 45 minutes to an hour before imaging. And then I've given a little bit of help with this 110 centimeter dew strap. So there are some additional purchases that you're going to want to consider. I made a dew shield for it, but I haven't noticed that I've needed it after doing this. I just use some rubber matting and some industrial Velcro and have it stick out about an additional 12 inches. And that was able to, give it some additional protection from dew. When it was really cold, like 5 or 6 degrees, the secondary mirror did frost over. So this kind of all contributed to why it took me longer to get this review out, because I had to waste several good nights just getting this thing running. And hopefully with some of these tips, it can help you speed it up. Now, the good news is if you have some of these accessories, it's very nice to bolt up. The OAG, because of the 80 millimeter imaging circle, you have plenty of room to get a full full sensor full of stars on the guide mirror. I've had no problem with that. And then you don't need any type of adapter for the electronic autofocuser. It just bolts right up using the thumb screw underneath. And the focuser, like I said, inside is robust enough to handle all this without tilt. I've been able to get some pretty good stars and I haven't seen any really noticeable tilt. This doesn't have a required backspace focus, but usually it's about 70 millimeters from the back of the focuser, and so you have a little bit more room to spare. In the video I did on the SCA off-axis guider, when you combine it with the ZWO filter wheel, you are over 55 millimeters, and then I have about 12 millimeters of focus travel as well, and I'm dialed in right at that setting. So now that you've seen the sheer scale of this thing, I wouldn't be doing the review justice if I didn't come out here and actually show you, because the photos never do justice. Let's go ahead and jump back in and finish up the review. So I did want to do a little bit of a walk around on the scope. There's 3 fans, as you can see, 1, 2, and 3 over there. They are controlled by the 2 switches on the right. I'll hold the mic up to it. It's pretty quiet, but they are pretty powerful. I did look right now, there is a ton of dew on the primary mirror, as I mentioned, and then these screws in a triangle pattern are what actually collimate the big primary mirror. So you adjust it, there's 2 different sizes, and then we'll switch around to the secondary mirror, which only has 3 different screws, and as you can see, there is plenty of dew on there. It probably will clear off within about 45 minutes or so. The first thing you want to do is make sure that these 4 are the same length. So grab a micrometer. There is a little adjustment you can make right here. And so these 2 were a little bit shorter. And so what I did was I tightened these 2 very slightly. I'm talking about like less than a millimeter difference. And you want to make sure that this is perfectly centered before you even start the collimation process. When you're looking through the other side, if you see that the hole that you're trying to center, so there'll be like a donut like this, if it's off to the side of one of these 3 screws, tightening the screw will actually push it away. So if it's over here and you're trying to get it centered here, tightening this will actually push it that direction. So just to give you a little bit of help in terms of collimation, those are some tips that I would give. And I just wanted to do a quick walk around here before we jump back inside so you can get a look at it. It does have a really nice dovetail on top to platform like an eagle or something like that. I do have the eagle, but in this case, it would make the weight situation even worse. So there's a quick walk around and let's jump inside. All right, now we're back inside. I want to go over what it's like to image with the scope and some of my results. But before I do that, I want to appease a couple friends of the channel who get on me for constantly never verbally asking folks to consider subscribing. This channel has put out a video every single week now for over 9 months in a row, sometimes 2 a week, and I will continue to put out good content as long as I know it's helping you guys out. For those of you that are subscribed and continue to like and comment, please do so. It never gets old. You might think that if you comment on every video, I'd get sick of it, but knowing that I'm helping the community at this point is the sole motivation for continuing to do the channel. And if you guys do have any good ideas for an upcoming episode, scroll through the 60 plus videos I've already done, and if I haven't covered it, go ahead and suggest it in the comments. I'm making this channel for you guys, and I want to make sure I'm making content that's helpful to you. Now that we've covered the physicality of the scope and some of the other considerations, what is it like to image with it? And when I'm getting the guiding performance that I want, the results are actually really good. I'm able to get stars according to the star detect feature on the ASI Air all the way down to about 1.7 or 1.8, which is pretty sharp. The nebula detail is really good. And the 2 images that I'm going to show you guys, one is the tadpoles done in HOO. I haven't had enough time to get sulfur data, but I've got about 7.5 hours of HAO3 combined. And what I'm really more curious is looking at the individual subframes as they come in. And you can see here in the HA, the tadpoles look really good. When you look at how much light it's collecting at f5, I do have another scope at f4.8. It is a triplet, and when I compare 2 images at 5 minutes, both using the same filter, the light gathering capability does look about equivalent, and so I would say the focal ratio is accurate on the SCA 260. The other image that I did was of the Bodi's Galaxy M81 and M82. I did that with the quad band filter. It's about 7.5 hours of data, and to be fair, I do think I need more time on this image, but again, looking at the individual subframes, they look pretty solid. I chose to do 3-minute exposures on this one, and I think if I were able to get another another 5 to 10 hours, this would come out pretty good. But I've just been super limited by the nights I've been able to shoot. And with having to throw out some subframes due to guiding, it's really been challenging to put together even these two images over the last month or so. Speaking of guiding and the mount, I did say I was going to save that conversation for later. The key thing for this with me thus far is being able to get guiding under that 0.6 range, because when I do, as I said earlier, my stars are nice and crispy around 1.7 or 1.8. When it sneaks up into that 1.0 or 1.1 range, the stars kind of go all the way into that 2.2 range, even if it's 10 minutes away from a 1.7 star when the guiding was good. It just slowly kind of creeps up and goes back down throughout the night. I'm not getting these sharp guiding spikes, as this is the second AM5 head I've used this scope on now. After I put out the ZWO video, they did reach out, and after about 4 weeks of back and forth, they finally did send out another mount head. And so I'm getting about the same performance on both. I'm just not getting the guiding spikes on the second one. So I would really recommend having a mount that's stronger than probably the AM5, something in the 50, 60, or even 75 pound range. Even slewing from the bottom position or during a meridian flip, the scope will get stuck from time to time. I have some video of that. And to prevent the inevitable comments I know I'm going to get regarding the mount, I'm going to go ahead and just put it to the go home position from the ASI Air. Okay. So if you want me to recommend this as a mount and you think that it's capable, I'm sorry, I'm just the wrong guy. I'm not going to tell you guys to put yourself in a situation like this. So inevitably what I end up having to do is basically kind of help it up, and then it will actually handle the mount going up to the home position. Once it gets to about there, it's fine. But anytime it's past about the 45-degree mark or below, that's when it really kind of has a problem. So now I can go ahead and send it home, and it won't have a problem. Now, when it's guiding, it can be down that low because it's not trying to move as fast. But either way, that's a pretty clear signal that this mount does not want something this heavy on top of it. Now, this is only when it's kind of in the lower positions, but on a meridian flip, you know, the scope does all kinds of acrobatics and you will get down into those low positions. And so you have to ask yourself, do you want to use a scope where you could potentially get stuck with that mount combination? And so my recommendation is going to be to get something a little bit more robust. I'm going to do a follow-up video on this scope with more images because I do have another mount on the way that has a higher carrying capacity, and so I think that'll make it a lot easier for me to get out more images and really showcase what this thing can do. I did reach out to several other folks, as I mentioned earlier, to get some anecdotal data for you guys, and all but one person is very happy with the scope, and actually some pretty talented astrophotographers are using it and they are getting some great images. So if you have all of the ancillary stuff covered and you have the experience to get this thing running, I think you will be really happy with the results. So overall, would I recommend the scope? I do think that it is a viable option if you're looking for a faster, longer focal length option. You just need to understand all of the other things that go along with it. If you're confident with reflectors and think that you can get it collimated and you have a mount that can handle it and understand off-axis guiding, I think it'll be a good option for you. And it is not a cheap scope. You know, it's over $4,000, but when you consider that you'd have to get a 10-inch reflector from another category, and then by the time you either get the coma corrector or the reducer, and then if it's a Newtonian, if you have to upgrade the focuser, for example, they tend to creep up into that $3,000 range by the time it's all said and done anyway. And so it's really not that much more to just have one that's good to go. The addition of the fan system is really nice because it actually does make a big impact on dew. And I think now that this is in like the version 2.1, so they've come out with basically 3 iterations, they've solved a lot of the problems that were with some of the earlier versions. And so it is one that I, could feel pretty confident recommending. I wouldn't say that it's going to be the scope that I use more often. For me, this is more of a fair weather scope because of the dew and the frost issues of those big mirrors. I'd probably like to break this out more in the late spring, summer, and fall season. Using it during the winter has been a bit of a handful. And so I do think that depending on your conditions and your situation, it's definitely one that you'd want to check out. If you guys do do have any additional questions, please leave them in the comment section below. It's been a while since I've done a scope review. I really tried to cover off on everything from the overall build quality. I do think SharpStar is trying to step up from some of the other mass-produced names out there, and this is their more premium lineup, to some of the additional equipment and considerations you're going to have to worry about when purchasing a scope like this. I will put the links in the comment below to Agena. It does help out the channel, and it'll give you a little bit of a shopping list of some of the other things that I recommend to take some of the guesswork out of it. I hope you guys don't think of this as some kind of advertisement for you to go out and buy stuff. I think I've been very fair in terms of both the pros and the cons, and most of the cons really have to do with anything that would be a large reflector and the issues that you're going to have with them. They're not really specific to this scope. I think what makes this scope special is that it's kind of a unique design and there just isn't a lot out there. So hopefully this video helped to alleviate some of the mystery. And if you're still not convinced, like I said, hopefully in about 3 or 4 weeks, I'll come out with a part 2 that'll be more image result heavy so you can really see what it can do. But otherwise, you know, check out Astrobin or even folks on Instagram and just find the other folks that I found and see what their results are if you want to see more of what it's capable of from an imaging standpoint. So guys, please stay tuned to the channel. Thank you so much for tuning into this one. We have a ton of exciting stuff. I've got a whole pile of gear that I need to get reviews out on, and so I think the channel is just going to be better and better as time goes on, and I really appreciate you guys being a part of it. So as always guys, until the next one, clear skies.